President's address. In line with previous practice, the chairperson has granted this request. With this, Mr. President, the floor is yours.
En primer lugar,
First of all, thank you very much for this invitation, for giving me this chance to be here today. And secondly, we would like to recall all of the victims and express our condolences to all of the people of Ukraine. And we also would like to express our condolences to the victims of 11th September. It's an important date to be here to talk about dialogue and peace. And now, if you allow, I will address you in English and also in some other of the OSCE's official languages.
Madam Chair, distinguished colleagues, it is an honor to address you today for the first time as President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, following my election last July in Porto. I'm deeply honored to represent 323 parliamentarians of 57 countries and to speak on their behalf, grounded in what unites us. Our responsibility as parliamentarians goes beyond regional interests. We must champion universal values such as democracy, human rights, dialogue, security, and peace without double standards from Vancouver to Vladivostok. That's why since July I work to preserve the same values in Ukraine and in Gaza, in Georgia, or in the Southeast Europe. I think that we all agree that if we truly want more democracy, we must strengthen the institutions that uphold it. I believe in multilateralism and dialogue as powerful tools to improve lives, but ideals alone are not enough. They require resources and political will. That's why I call on all participant states to reinforce their support to the OCPA, or to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. Stronger parliamentary engagement in election observation, as Madam Chair mentioned, and democratic oversight demands sustained commitment. Initiatives like Helsinki Plus 50 Fund are a step in the right direction. But let's be clear, supporting and funding OSCE and its assembly is not an administrative formality. It's an investment in democracy. And don't forget that 20 years ago, we believed that accelerated globalization and growing democracy would define a world of collective progress and shared values. We were wrong. And the second quarter of this century has just begun under the shadow of conflict, the erosion of democracy, and the decline of an unstoppable globalized order. This is important to recall on a day like today, September 11, a day that changed the course of history. And let's be honest, we are living through a profound transition, an interregnum, from a liberal global order to the comeback of authoritarianism models that challenge the rule-based system. One might assume that our role as parliamentarians and multilateral institutions is outdated, but I believe the opposite. And my vision is of one of critical optimism. Yes, we are witnessing a global authoritarian wave, the liberal order built since Bretton Woods, and the UN Charter is at risk. And yet democracies remain strong because their strength lies in the people and in our political will, as I mentioned before. Last year alone, more than half the world's population went to the polls. That is a sign of hope, Madam President, and of resilience. But still we must confront a hard truth. We once believed that politics had permanently replaced war. But today we are seeing more of the logic of power than the power of logic. And despite the scales of today's crisis, it is far too early to give up on politics, on diplomacy, or on democracy. And no matter how turbulent the sea is, I believe above all in the agenda, in the strength of people and the resilience of democracy. But when democracy fails to deliver on education, on health, on war, on climate crisis, citizens might turn, with reason, to dangerous alternatives that echo the darkest moments of our past. But let me be clear, politics is not dead, nor are the institutions and frameworks built in the post-war era irrelevant. The fifth anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act in Helsinki a month ago reminds us of two essential truths. First, dialogue, even détente, is possible in moments of extreme tension, even during the Cold War. Bridges were built, even then. Second, if security is one of our citizens' top concerns, then the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, has a vital role to play. And I think that if dialogue is a prerequisite for security and our commitments and principles are our end goal, then we legislators are more needed than ever in these difficult times. Because we have dialogue with all, there can be no security for all. As president, I work to ensure that the OSCE and its Parliamentary Assembly remain genuine platforms for dialogue with all members, no exceptions, without compromising on our principles. We must support vibrant democracies with strong civil societies, independent media, and deep respect for human rights. And to that end, we will work closely with OSCE Secretary General Feridun Siniloglu and the ODIHR and the representative on the freedom of media and High Commissioner of National Minorities. And I look forward to working with all OSCE heads of institutions and to closely collaborate with the current Finnish chair and incoming Swiss chair in 2026. And as president, since I took office in July, I also commit to advancing gender equality across the region. More women in leadership and true gender parity in OSCE national parliaments is one of the most revolutionary steps we must take. Since taking office, most of my new appointments have been women, but gender leadership must extend to organizations, parliaments, and governments. Gender parity is not a slogan, it's a piece of strategy, and I think it links to the agenda and the roadmap of the Finnish chairmanship. And we are also already working on to make the OCPA a more LGBTQ+ friendly organization and inclusive organization. Dear delegates, my first official call as president was to Rada Speaker Ruslan Stefanchuk, that I already met in 2022 in Kiev. I expressed our shared desire for peace in a European Ukraine and my full support for President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. Any peace solution must include Ukraine. For that to happen, Russia must end its aggression and withdraw all forces. It must also stop violating the territorial integrity of other countries, including Poland. And recent missile strikes in Kiev, damaging government buildings, diplomatic missions, and killing civilians are unacceptable violations of international law and an attack on diplomacy itself. Today, I call again on the Russian administration and President Putin directly to engage in meaningful dialogue, beginning with a ceasefire and full respect for Ukraine's sovereignty. And we must also be a voice of the millions of all faiths who have lost hope, witnessing the ongoing tragedy in Gaza. In one of my first meetings, I expressed my deep concern to the OSCE Secretary General over the humanitarian catastrophe. At our autumn meeting in Istanbul, we will hold a discussion on the situation in the Middle East and its implications for our region. I hope there will be room for dialogue between Israeli and Palestinian representatives. Dear members, there can be no global security without peace in the Middle East. And after 2 years, we know a military solution is not possible. History will judge us, as it judged the horror of Srebrenica now 30 years ago. As president, I feel a moral obligation to condemn both the atrocities of October 7th and the devastating loss of over 50,000 civilians' lives in Gaza. Today, I reaffirm the OSCE's grave concern over possible war crimes and the ICG preliminary finding of a plausible case of genocide in Israel. As I told the president of the Knesset last March in Jerusalem, democracies do not fight terrorism by killing civilians. And I urge Prime Minister Netanyahu to honor the democratic principles of his country and to bring this war to an end. Y permítanme que hable en mi lengua porque estamos...
I will speak my language because what we are seeing, and I say this right from my heart, speaking very personally, what we are saying, we need to say its name. We're seeing a genocide which is being broadcast and live streaming. And so at the Venice Festival, we saw the prize awarded to a film that talked about the memory, this urgency.
Hope in places we have long played a role. I welcome diplomatic efforts in the South Caucasus, including the historic joint appeal by Armenia and Azerbaijan, and the closure of the Minsk process, and that I hope will be a step to approve the unified budget. And to both delegations, I'd say your region can become a strategic hub between East and West, North and South, and united, the impact on your people could be transformational. Peace brings prosperity. Unity transforms regions. And also there, let me reaffirm our support for democratic, free, and European Georgia. And over the years, I had many conversations with Georgia's current foreign minister, formerly head of the Georgia's OSCE delegation. And I appreciate the recent invitation to observe coming municipal election. I appreciate that. But I must also call on Georgian leaders to end human rights violations and restore respect for freedoms of speech and association. And let me close with perhaps the greatest long-term challenge we face, the climate crisis. We must accelerate a green and a fair energy transition and take urgent action to reduce global warming. But if climate transition is not fair, democracy will pay the price. Mesdames et messieurs, je voulais souligner finalement.
Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I would like to underscore that our commitment is based on the universal principles of human rights, the equality of people, and the dignity of each person. Even as we see increasing conflicts, we must continue to negotiate, and the OSCE
The OSCE is a perfect instrument. It is a bridge between North and South, between citizens and institutions. It can make the OSCE region a more safe region, more green, more democratic.
What counts is to work for our citizens, and for this we need the institutions to do this. So we will do all possible using the transformative force of policy, of politics, science, and democracy, and the catalyst power of dialogue. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
I thank you.